So thank you all for being here today. I want to give each of you a chance to talk a little bit about the work you're leading. And I know you're all supporting not only people, young people throughout some of our most impacted communities around poverty and the issues that I've just outlined. So if you could just kind of run down the panel, who you are, what work you're leading, that'd be great.
Sure. Just quickly, Rick Estrada at Metropolitan Family Services. As you heard, we're the first chartered not-for-profit in the state of Illinois. We have worked for 163 years on these issues. Obviously, together, collectively, we haven't figured out the issue of poverty. But I think what we're here to talk about today, from my perspective, is our collaboration in Chicago's 10 communities with the highest incidence of gun violence, where we are coordinating a lot of the street outreach work and developed something called the Metropolitan Peace Academy to work on that violence issue. But the work of Metropolitan is holistic, right? So everything from education, mental health, legal aid, job training, domestic violence, so et cetera. So we think that every individual needs this holistic service. So I'll leave it at that.
My name is Jahmal Cole. I run an organization called My Block, My Hood, My City. A lot of teenagers in Chicago, they've never been downtown. They've never seen the lake, you know what I mean? They see Lake Michigan, they say, what ocean is that, right? A lot of kids, they've never waited for a taxi before. Their whole worldview is shaped by the infrastructure of their neighborhood, and that can be tragic in some instances. So we take teenagers from these divested communities on educational field trips, and we expose them to different cultures, different professions, different cuisines. The goal is for them to develop pride and bring that pride back to their neighborhoods. All of our students are civically engaged. They volunteer, they shovel snow for seniors in the winter. And right now we're hanging holiday lights on King Drive, like physically putting lights up from 35th Street all the way to 115th Street. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Billy Moore. I'm the manager at IMAN, the Inner City Muslim Action Network of our Green Reentry program. We have an intergenerational cohort where we are funded and supported by Chicago CRED to help young men who have been identified as being most at risk of being shot or shooting someone. We take them through 3 construction trades. We also have a heavy emphasis on cognitive development through CBI. And I also manage our outreach team in West Englewood, which we are partnered with CP4P under the Metropolitan banner. And I also am a cohort graduate of the Peace Academy. So.
At Chicago CRED, we're just laser focused on trying to reduce gun violence in Chicago on the south and west sides. And for those that don't know, Chicago is 7 times more violent than New York, 3 to 4 times more violent than LA. We're the 3rd largest city, but have more violence than LA and New York combined, which doesn't make any sense. And we're privileged to partner with these guys and a bunch of other amazing folks around the city trying to just make our city safer.
Thanks. And Arne, could you drill in a little bit more into CRED and just what you're doing, the components of that? Because I know it's also a number of you are working on those same things and partnering with that initiative.
So for me, coming home to Chicago, this felt like the crisis facing the city. And I've said that lots I was proud of during my time with Chicago Public Schools and happy to talk about successes, but by far the toughest part of the job was on my watch during my 7.5 years. We had, on average, a student killed every 2 weeks due to gun violence. It was a staggering rate of loss. Never in a school, but on the block, on the way home, in the living, in their living room. And when our family moved to DC for 7 years, I naively thought things couldn't get worse. I thought Chicago was as bad as it could get. And unfortunately, for a whole host of reasons, Chicago got a lot worse. So coming home, it didn't feel right not to work on this issue. And the epiphany I had, which shows how not smart I am, is that if you want to stop shooting, if you want to do shooting, you have to work with the shooters. You have to work with the guys actually doing the shooting. And so 3 years ago, we started working with 30 guys on the far south side. Now with our partners, we're up to closer to 500. The challenge is Chicago has strict gun laws, but we don't have a moat around us. We're not on an island. We're next to Indiana, and Indiana's lax gun laws, and the guns pour into us. I was going to be clear, we work with amazing, amazing individual police, but structurally, trust with the community and the police is broken. There's something called the clear rate, which is the percent of crimes that get solved. In Chicago in 2017 for homicide, it was 17%. So if you killed someone, you literally had an 83% chance of getting away with murder. If you shot someone and didn't kill them, that has a 3 to 4% clear rate. So our reality is we have way, way, way too many guns. We have a breakdown in trust with the police. So our whole focus is giving guys hope, giving them a reason to put down the guns, working with them, amazing life coaches like Billy and others, helping them deal with their trauma, lots of therapy. A lot of guys getting high school diplomas, but helping our young men lead the city to where we need to go. They're the answer. They're the ones who are going to make Chicago safer.
Thanks. Billy, could you talk a little bit about being a coach and just what that looks like, what supports you provide, et cetera, and kind of build that trust back?
Yeah, so, it's my belief that experience is not always the best teacher. So what I do is pretty much, talk to these young men about the things I've been through to help them navigate, the situation that they live in. They're dealing with some unbelievable circumstances, trying to live in communities where they've witnessed so much trauma. I have one young man that's been shot 21 times, and he still lives in the same community. And it's not surprising that he has a gun case. He's basically in this hypervigilant state where he just don't want to die. And unfortunately, coming to IMAN, the 8 hours, 6 hours that he spent with us is really like the only time that he's able to find peace. So we take full advantage of that opportunity by trying to give him, a hard trade, a skill that can possibly, help him become employable, to try to get him to think different about himself cognitively, to start putting more thought in front of feelings. A lot of these young men are very emotional. They come from households where they didn't have fathers or positive male role models as an influence in their life. So basically, anything to set them off. So we get an opportunity to spend time with these young men, to put ourselves out there, to be vulnerable, to show them that we've been through some things. A lot of time we came out on the losing end, and we trying to just correct the direction in which our young men are existing. They're not living. They don't have the opportunity, that a lot of other people have to just have an abundant and enjoyable life, to just have anything that they want or pursue things that they want that they don't think is for them. They're existing, and basically we just try to get them something to hope for, something better. A lot of these young men don't have hope. When you show me a young man with a gun, I show you a young man without hope. So.
That reminds me of a research that came out with Thrive and My Brother's Keeper, and they've been doing a number of interviews throughout the city, and one of it is that the number one thing that kept coming back is that the young Black men they were talking with, they just wanted a purpose. It wasn't a specific program. It wasn't a specific intervention. They just simply wanted to understand their purpose and engage. And so just thought it was interesting and right in line with what you're talking about. For Jahmal and Rick, this idea of trauma, I would like to hear about it a little bit more in both of your work. And I know, Jahmal, you're literally embedded in community and working with kids directly, and Rick a little bit more systemically on the issue. It's something that A Better Chicago has invested a great deal of time and funding into education as a pathway out. But as we're thinking about what else should we be supporting when children are living in poverty, trauma is coming back as like one of the number one issues that we need to figure out how to mitigate and how to help and how to support. So if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing in your work, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll go. So I guess I'll start and say, I don't think Chicago was designed for everybody to be inspired. You know what I mean? Because it's really hard to be inspired if you grew up in Parkway Gardens on 65th, right? You got an 8-foot gate surrounding your whole block, high-tech video surveillance cameras. You need a key fob to open the gate, and it takes a minute to open, a minute to close. It's hard to be inspired when you don't have internet. You got to go to McDonald's to use the Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? It's hard to be inspired when there's paddy wagons parked outside the front of your high school. It's hard to be inspired at the basketball game after school when there's no parents in the stand because the parents is working 2-3 jobs. It's hard to be inspired when there's vacant lots full of trash and you got like rats running around big as Arizona cans. I feel like it's just, that's not inspirational, right? I feel like in Chicago, we talk a lot about enforcing laws and locking kids up, but you can't really talk about, consequences until you understand that kids are responding correctly to trauma that exists in their neighborhoods. You know what I mean? I don't even get mad at kids for being aggressive or saying they don't trust people. When you order your food every day through bulletproof glass windows, your whole life, you don't trust nobody. You know what I mean? So they're responding correctly to this type of trauma that exists. And what I've seen is that, if I ask a kid, hey, there's 15 currency exchanges in the community and no banks. So I say, what's the job at a bank? They don't know. So I take kids outside of their comfort zones and we expose them to different cultures, different professions, different cuisines. I could take a kid to Gatorade and they can learn about consumer engagement. The next week they're gonna say, Jahmal, I wanna be a consumer engagement specialist. You'd be like, hey, why? I didn't know that job existed. So I think kids are, what we try to do is like, our philosophy of My Block, My Hood, My City is only 15 words. And these 15 words, I'm telling you, this is our organizing philosophy in 15 words. If you implement this, you'll make your block immediately safer, healthier, and happier. I'm telling you right now. Our 15-word philosophy is what's something simple that I can do that'll have a positive impact on my block. What's something simple I can do that'll have a positive impact on my block? You just ask somebody in Chicago right now, hey, why does your block look like this? They always say the city's messed up, the weather is messed up, the government's messed up, the schools are messed up, the economy is, their philosophy is messed up. We always tell our students, what's something simple that you can do that'll have a positive impact on your block? And I think that changes things right away.
Yeah, I'll speak about it from a kind of systemic perspective, but it's two stories, and I'll be very brief, that brought us to the point where we decided to intervene in the violence in partnership with Arne and Ready and all the other programs. And one of them was we have a Young Fathers program, and as part of the facilitation process, the facilitator asked all of our young fathers to stand up, and he started asking questions. They said, remain standing if you've experienced one of these things. And he went off, have you seen somebody be shot? Everybody's standing. Remain standing if you suffered domestic violence. Everybody remains standing. And so by the end of the thing, every single one of our dads but one still was standing, and including seeing family members be shot. So we're like, okay, that's institutional trauma if I've ever heard one. The second one was really a young children in our early childhood center in Englewood, where we went to support our teachers because they were telling us that they were very stressed out by the work environments, and so we're thinking, what's going on at work? Are we not supporting them? But really what they told us is we need mental health ourselves because we're watching these young children as young as 2 and 3 years old hurt themselves. So let me say that again. 2 and 3-year-old children are hurting themselves, and they call them kamikaze babies. And we're like, well, whoa. So this trauma is happening for the young dads, it's happening with these young children, and we decided, okay, so we have been a prevention organization, again, providing high quality early childhood education, after school work, all that stuff. But how do we get more involved in the area of violence? Because clearly these young children are learning the violence from very stressed out parents who have suffered from trauma and probably were similar to those children. So that's how we got involved in this. And it's been, I think, a labor of literally love for a couple hundred people that we now have working in. We started out in 10 neighborhoods. We are now at by the end of this year, by the beginning of next year, January 1st, we'll be in 21 neighborhoods with the highest incidence of gun violence, providing street outreach. And if you don't know what street outreach, Billy knows this way better than I do, but it's people who are credible messengers, who have lived that lifestyle. Many of our people have felonies in their backgrounds, and they have literally transformed their lives. They are living proof that transformation is possible, living proof that when somebody is healed, they can teach others how to heal themselves. So that's essentially what we're doing there, but we're also trying to professionalize that field by offering them the Peace Academy, where you learn the best available science and practice so that you do this well. We need to do it well so that the police, public health, and other systems trust the work that we're doing. And so that's from a systemic perspective. We need to make inroads in the area of trust.
And how do you keep community at the core of what you're doing? Like I heard you talk about some of the, you went and visited programs, you heard from parents, you understood, and Billy, I know you're deeply embedded in the community, Jahmal as well, and Arne the cred, but it's something A Better Chicago is trying to get better at. I know in conversations in town, civic leaders, philanthropy, et cetera, hearing from community, truly having those voices empowered, helping make policy programs, et cetera. How do you keep that core to your work? Or do you have advice for those of us who aren't as proximate, right? We're not walking in Inglewood every day. Like, how do we get those voices truly at the table to help drive our work?
I'll go quickly. So we're not doing the actual work. We are essentially a pass-through agent for grassroots communities, grassroots organizations in those neighborhoods. So places like Target Area Development Corporation, IMAN is one of our partners, and a lot of faith-based organizations. They do the actual work, they advise us, and the one thing that we know is that partnership and collaboration is the hardest thing. And so we have to be willing to disagree, to struggle, arm wrestle, argue, fight, all those things. But at the end of the day, we stand together in this work. And that's been, the reason I believe we have a chance, that's the wrong word, a chance to be successful here is because we continue to stand together and listening to the wisdom that comes from community.
I think whenever you analyzing a problem, you're trying to come up with the solution. And I think the problem is always close to the solution. And if you don't include them, then you basically spinning your wheels. You have to listen to these people that's going through it. I think we're so busy trying to punish trauma. We don't promote healing. We don't bring the people to the table that's hurt. We don't try to really understand why this is happening. We look at the circumstance. We don't look at the circumstances. For the most part, we see the crime, So if you really want to disrupt that narrative, you have to talk to those who are in it, who's been suffering from it, and who's perpetrating it in order to get a real sense of how you need to address it.
Jahmal, do you have anything?
I was just thinking about a story about seeing my dad. Me and my father were homeless probably from like 10 to 13. We lived in the back of U-Haul trucks and we lived, on porches. And I remember one day seeing my dad go into Jewel's and steal some dinner for us, basically. And I think he had maybe some canned goods. He might have had some hot dogs. And he always brought me out an orange juice, whatever. I was a kid. And I was like, man, Pops, you just stole our dinner for tonight. And he looked down at me. He said, I ain't never stolen nothing a day in my life. And so that was my dad's perspective. Indirectly, he was teaching me early, how to steal. We used to just break into houses to steal cereal. The first time I tasted lasagna was when I broke into somebody's house. And I remember when I opened the refrigerator, I saw the lasagna, I took a bite out of it, and I was like, man, this is what being rich tastes like. I wonder what the people thought when they came home and saw the lasagna just ate up, this dude's crazy. But no, that was the first time I ever tasted lasagna. So we used to seeing pineapples and first time I got caught stealing a trapper keeper in a protractor. I thought that was cool, So a lot of times, you want to arrest a kid for carrying a gun, but the kid might be scared to walk to school. Every adult's failed them their whole life, and they don't feel safe. We can arrest the kids for selling drugs, but we failed to put jobs in their community. So I agree wholeheartedly. I think we need to understand that these kids are responding correctly to trauma that exists in their neighborhood.
Thanks. Arne, how do you think about it? I know you're doing cred in the community, but you're also, in the policy circles too still, state, federal, city. How do you keep community core?
I think these guys said it, that we're working with men, not boys. We're co-designing with them every single day. And they know what they need. They know what they don't need. And for us not to listen, for us not to be in partnership be the height of, I don't know what, ego or something. So it's actually very selfish that the closer you are, the more you're listening, the more you're talking to guys, the more effective you're going to be. Most of what I designed by talking to people in Cook County Jail, and that was my focus group. I kept going back, kept testing my ideas, and you get real honest feedback there. And they tell you what makes sense and they tell you what's crazy. And it was some of the best learning. I was lucky to go to some great schools. Probably some of the best learning I've ever had in my life.
Jahmal, could you talk a little bit about experiential learning from your perspective? We were talking about this a little earlier. Is, you know, one thing is trying to, as I said, the city is so segregated. You know, people do not get into each other's communities, but it's not only, you know, you work actually, you know, exposing kids to the lake, et cetera, but I'd argue that, you know, we need to also get adults from around the city to come see and understand these issues and also see the assets in these communities. And could you talk a little bit about that work?
Yeah, sure. So we have a program called Youth-Led Tours. It's a summer job for our students. So we provide jobs for about 15 kids in the summer, and they lead tours of the neighborhoods. And everybody here is welcome to join. You can go to our website, formyblock.org. But these kids' summer job. You can take a tour of North Lawndale and see it from the youth's perspective. It's an asset-based tour. So this is actually, I'm gonna take you to Sal's on 16th Street, and they make the best hoagies in the city. This is where I like eat every morning, you know? I'm gonna show you the artful intersections, the community roots. I'm gonna, you know, the youth are the best stakeholders in their community. And what we've seen is that even like the new police officers are coming on the tours with our students, and they're actually getting to see, you know, police officers, they have a big presence in North Lawndale, but they don't got no access. So, but when you take a youth-led tour with the students, you actually can see people on the porch and meet them. Like, when you're arresting somebody, it's a tough situation, but when you're meeting somebody as you're walking through a community, you can feel like more of a connection to a community. So, and it also gives the youth presentation skills. So, to make our city better, basically, we need more people to step outside their comfort zone and expose themselves to different cultures, professions, and cuisines in our city. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, Chicago's a wonderful city. We got the best architecture. We got food, we got music. We got to just step outside our comfort zone and explore. And our youth-led tours can give everybody in this audience an opportunity to see North Lawndale, Humboldt Park, and South Shore from the youth perspective.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's explore, right? Explore, experience, evolve. That's your
tagline.
That's
yeah,
your tagline.
Exactly. Because it'll happen, man. It'll happen. Once you step outside your comfort zone, you'll stop thinking that we're all so different. If you go to Pilsen, you're going to eat tortilla, beef, and rice. You know what I mean? If you go to Greektown, you're going to eat, what do they be eating in Greektown? I mean, they're going to eat pita, beef, and rice. You know what I mean? Like, if you go to Devon Avenue, they're going to be eating non-beef and rice. Everybody eating the same thing. We eating the same thing, and we think we're so different in Chicago. It's crazy. I don't get over there much. I'm just saying.
Jahmal, I think you need to take a tour of Greektown.
I'm Athena Greek.
And let me take you to Pilsen.
I'll come through. Mikaye mi barrio.
So on collaboration, Rick, you made mention of collaboration earlier in your opening remarks, but could you give us, poverty is such a complex issue. We're not going to solve it individually. I know you're all collaborating together in various ways, but could you talk a little bit about some of the more powerful collaborations you have in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I said earlier, collaboration is the hardest thing in the world to do, but any organization that tells you that they have the answer to street violence or gun violence or poverty, you walk away from them because no one does, or else we would have figured this out already. So, but we think that collectively, if we listen to each other, we learn from each other, that we can begin to understand what actually works in community. You've heard this already. But when we created Communities Partnering for Peace, it's CP4P, Communities Partnering for Peace again. It was, in its concept, it's a great idea. You bring the 9 organizations that are working in community, later became 10, and now it's up to 15 and 21 communities. But the concept is great, but once you start actually dividing resources, figuring out turf and boundary, you realize a couple of things. One is that Chicago has this gangbanger mentality, right? And let me explain what that means. And it's not the street organizations. It's not the gangbangers out there that are walking the street. It's our politicians. It's our nonprofits. It's all these other institutions that act viciously against each other and guard turf. So it's those organizations that do that. And we've been teaching our children how to act. And they grow up. And then they act out because we've taught them that way. That's the way we act. We hoard resources and we act viciously. So now you try to bring these groups together to deal with the gun violence issue. And guess what? They've all learned to act that way. And so trying to, one, tell them that sobering reality that we can't act like gangbangers ourselves was difficult for us to hear, for them to hear as well. And then it took us, I would say, about 18 months just to begin to trust each other, that we can be true partners. And I think at the end of the day, now into our third year, we now begin to understand that it's only through this collective that we can develop a response to the violence and the poverty and all these issues that come along with it. So for us, there's no more important thing than this collaboration. So if our partnership, if our initiative is defunded tomorrow, but if the greatest success for me and for our organization would be if these people keep meeting without the funding and keep working together because they broke down those barriers, those turf issues, then this project, this experiment, this pilot was a great success. And again, it's still a pilot. We're still trying to figure out how to work together and to, again, not implement the way we've been taught all our lives to hoard resources and act viciously and et cetera. So that's why it's so important to us.
Those challenges are real, but I just want to let people know why I'm so hopeful that neighborhoods like North Lawndale, where we have multiple partners working together and wasn't easy, we're seeing very significant reductions in violence. Now, the past 2 months have been really tough there. We have a long way to go. But we're actually seeing in neighborhoods where there are 3, 4 different partners, we call them high-intensity neighborhoods, we're seeing some of the biggest reductions. And it's not just the nonprofits getting along, which we had to do a peace circle with some of our nonprofits. That was interesting and worked out well. Got to practice what you preach. But our staff is leading meetings every 2 weeks with police and outreach, South and West Side coordination meetings. And those forces were always sort of adversarial at each other's throats. And now they're really working and sharing information, and police are stepping up some places. They're giving space for outreach to step up other places. And so it is hard, it is difficult, it may not be natural, but it's not theory, it's actually happening. And to see the progress and see the results, it's pretty remarkable. And again, it makes me very hopeful where if we can stay the course and keep investing, keep scaling, 3, 4, 5 years from now, I think we could be at a radically, radically different place as a city.
At IMAN, as I mentioned, one of the programs that we teach through our Green Reentry is the construction trade. And I think one of the biggest industrial presence in Chicago you see is construction. And I know when I'm going through Englewood or Auburn Gresham and I see construction being done, on this side of the street, I can look on that side of the street and see young men just hanging out on the corner, And the people that's doing the work don't look like the people that live in the community. And we're trying to develop those type of partnerships, with industry to say, these men should have a hand in helping to develop this city, especially their community. Going back to the gang banging aspect, gangs claim territories that they don't have no investment in, So if these men are just out here not doing nothing with no purpose, waiting to go to jail or be killed, and you building up their community around them without them in mind, then we need you to help us, help them. Allow them, give us some of those jobs. We're training these guys. They're learning. They're excited. Arne's been there. He's seen how excited these guys is. Hey, Arne, I know how to put up this wall. Look, how they act, when just in class, they get so motivated. But then when we reach out to certain construction companies and unions, who we, think that will invest in our guys, we get sold dreams. This is a democratic city, and I think a lot of times we just sell our votes and we don't get nothing in return. We don't have access to these unions, and they need to give our young men an opportunity to help be a part of that process of building up, their communities, so.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about jobs, and I know a number of you have mentioned economic, opportunity, job creation, access to jobs, training. That's something, again, and Arne, I know you spent bulk of your career in education, so have I. but realizing getting to that end, that opportunity, the family sustaining wage, the end goal of getting out of poverty, how can we start helping create those conditions? What are the aspects of the work that we should be thinking about?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think we're going to solve poverty. I think we're trying to just create opportunity. I don't think we're trying to solve a crime problem, actually, with violence. I think we're trying to solve an economic problem. And the reality is that lots of our guys, every guy's story is different, but lots of our guys at 12 or 13 had to start making some money. That was they had to start making some money. And all of us in nice rooms like this were absent, and the only guy hiring was the guy in the corner. And they are always hiring. It's never like full employment. There's always a job, to be a lookout, to be a runner, to do something. The youngest guy I know told me he started selling drugs when he was 9 years old. And he said that was really hard. I'm like, I bet that was pretty hard. That was his reality. There's also a myth that all our guys are getting rich on the streets. Very few guys are getting rich on the streets. When guys come into IMAN, our programs, $11, $12, $13 an hour, half the guys, that's a pay increase. Other half, it's a pay decrease, but they'll trade it for the security. Our first cohort, our worst shooter, the guy who was creating the most mayhem on the streets, he was making $80 a day. We doubled his pay. It was a very rational choice for him to make. So every time there's a shooting, they ask the police chief, and police have a job, what are you doing to solve it? For me, we should be asking every CEO in Chicago, what are you doing to solve this? And we have lots and lots of guys carrying guns, but they're carrying what we call it defensively. They're not looking to shoot, they're just trying to stay alive. We have very few what we call active shooters in Chicago. There's no magic number. Call it 3,000, call it 4,000, call it 5,000. But a city of all of our resources, if we can't create 5,000 jobs, shame on us. And it's not, these aren't big numbers. We don't need 50,000. We had a couple thousand jobs, and we have amazing employers. We have about 40 employers that are hiring at the back end. We have 2 of our guys working at law firms. We have 1 guy working at Deloitte, which is amazing. But we need the business community to step up. And if we could do that, again, you would see a precipitous drop in violence. Guys made a rational choice at 12 or 13. They're making another rational choice at 18, 22, 24 to come work with Billy and come work with our other partners. We just need to provide some more rational choices. They will make the right choice.
Yeah, like Arne said, it's not a big number. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people that's willing to collaborate on us as we help these guys learn trades. We're dealing with this phenomenon now of our guys that once they finish the program, they want to hang on. They're looking at a program now as their career. And this is only a stepping stone because we don't have a lot of other opportunities waiting for them. The last thing you want to hear maybe 6, 7 months down the line, he out there selling weed again, So we definitely need the business community to take more of an investment, not just in how they make their money into the community, but how stable the community can be so that they can continue to help, a community, start thriving. So
just keep pushing. It's just interesting. Our guys, just always trying to be honest, our guys met with Mayor Emanuel a while back. Mayor Emanuel started talking about the Second Chance program with the CTA, which sounds great, probably is great. And immediately, it was actually Jeremy Berry. Jeremy Berry raised his hand and said, that program's for people with misdemeanors. We have felonies, we have violent felonies. And the conversation went south from there. And so what we have to do is, I'll talk about get outside our comfort zones. People with violent felonies doesn't define who they are. It's maybe something that happened when they were 16 or 17 or 18, but their personhood, who they are, is much bigger than the worst thing they did in their life. I always say, if the worst thing I did in my life defined me, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's not just even give a second chance, it's just have people grown. Where have they gone with life? What are they doing now? And again, guys who have been through a lot, and yes, who have done a lot, are smart, they're resilient, they're committed, they're talented, they're leaders, they want something better for themselves, they want something better for their families, many are fathers. If we're not willing to give that chance, if we're not willing to look beyond the worst thing they did at one moment in their life, then we keep them on the streets. We keep them marginalized, and they're going to eat. They're going to pay rent. They're going to have a roof over their heads. They're going to make money one way or another. It's up to us in rooms like this to decide, are they going to have a chance to earn a living and support their family in the legal economy or not?
Jahmal, I feel like you made a motion there.
Oh, no,
You're
I'm good.
Okay.
Just
Really?
listening to Arne, I just think about this little quote I read, that if a flower is not blooming, you don't fix the flower, you fix the environment around the flower. And I think, you know, the environment has a responsibility of helping these flowers to bloom, you know, so instead of walking on them or just uprooting them and discarding them.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Yeah, that's really what applause for that. I think related to that point on the jobs issue, you know, there are dozens upon dozens of job training programs out in the city today. And here's I don't mean to be the most critical, pessimistic guy here, because usually I'm an optimist, but they're not ready. Those jobs aren't ready to handle the people that we work with, the people that are most likely to be caught with a gun. They'd rather be caught with one than without one, right? They're not ready for that population of people that we serve. So in our work for CP4P, so we've developed a job training initiative, but we don't want to, again, reinvent the wheel again. Ours is essentially this. We work with our participants to get them ready to enter the workforce, knowing full well that they're likely going to fail 4 or 5 times, but to get them ready to enter that workforce. But that's not the most critical thing, because that's like trying to fix the flower. So then we are also working with all the job training programs that are willing to work with us to get those people ready to work with our participants. Because one, they're kind of afraid of our participants, right? They're people with felonies. And so we have to get them to do what Brian Samuelson says. Essentially, they have to get proximate, and they have to do uncomfortable things, and they have to be more hopeful, right? So we need to get all the job training programs to be able to handle our people. So we're working both on the front end and the back end to try to get these two different entities to come together and actually have a job. And then just jumping off of what Billy said earlier, we have to hold the unions accountable, because they all claim to want to work with these folks, but they are unwilling to really work with this population. And so for us, again, the job is not necessarily the answer for all of our problems, but it's certainly a significant one to get them going. And as an organization, we also have to do uncomfortable things. Imagine running a 160-year-old organization that has a bunch of social worker, do-gooder types, and all of a sudden now we're saying we're going to employ felons, and not just 1 or 2, we're going to employ a couple hundred felons at our organization. It's shocking to our board, to our insurance providers, to our HR department, but we have to get comfortable. We have to do uncomfortable things if we're going to bring hope to these communities and people we care about.
So how do we start pushing that sort of whether it's city government, whether it's with CEOs, how do we start pushing this conversation? I mean, we've got a number of civic leaders here today, you know, folks in lots of different companies sitting in the audience. Like, how do we start creating those conditions?
I shared an idea with Arne a long time ago. You may or may not remember this, Arne, but I haven't followed up on it. And essentially, every city or every government unit, whether it's the county, the city, the state, but also those other big sister institutions, the CHA, et cetera, they have procurement offices, and they give out lots of contracts and millions of dollars worth of contracts, right? Each one of these, for example, the U of I has a $7 billion budget, the city of Chicago has a $7 billion budget, et cetera. So they give out lots of contracts. What if in the procurement code, we said that if you get a contract of, just pick a number, 10 million or more, that you have to employ one of our guys And by the way, we're not going to just say employ them. We're going to run them through one of our programs first to make sure that the individual you get is ready for a job. What if we did that for all of the different entities from the U of I to the city of Chicago and required that in the procurement code? I know people would fight against it, but what if we did that? What if we actually accomplished that? Maybe we can get these couple thousand jobs made available to these guys.
It's a great idea. And again, it's so important that people understand the corporate sector, this can't be philanthropy. This has to be you're investing in a talent pool that's going to make your company better. And our guys working in the law firms, our guy working at Deloitte, they're making those companies better. So yes, we need to make people uncomfortable and do this, but these are highly motivated employees. These are guys, committed to doing something better for their lives. And so I don't want people to see this as charity. I want them to see this as their self-interest. Yes, it is a slightly different recruiting pool than you're used to, but these are some amazing young men. Beth, to your larger issue, the challenge that we're seeing now is that our city, again, our city's 7 times more violent than New York, 3 to 4 times more violent than LA. We can learn a lot from other cities who have done this better than us. They haven't done it perfectly. So we brought in 5 mayors. We brought in people from New York and LA last week. And guess what they do? They've invested in street outreach for years. Our city hasn't done that. Our city has a police-only, an arrest-only strategy. I'm not a big fan of mass incarceration. I don't think it's worked. I think it's actually had a devastating impact on the communities we're talking about. And in fact, the police stuff is largely broken right now. So we invest $2.5 billion in that each year as a city, and our city invests nothing, 0, in street outreach and getting to guys before they're committing the crimes, before they're getting locked up. And so we're doing a lot of work, but this is all basically funded philanthropically. And at some point, the city has to step up and invest, and the state has to step up and invest. And we're working hard with Mayor Lightfoot. She's got a tough budget situation, but this is a crisis facing the city. And this stuff is proven to work. It's proven to work in other cities. And so we don't have to just sort of try and solve this stuff by ourselves. Let's just look at a couple other places that have been wildly more successful than us, and let's learn some of those lessons and getting the city and the state to invest in the front end in this work. That would allow us to scale and reach the number of guys we need to see the kinds of dramatic reductions that I think our kids desperately deserve on the south and west sides.
Yeah, our guys are definitely super motivated. I think Arne and I agree with that, but institutions tend not to change unless you provide them an incentive for them to change, and I think that's where we need to figure that out.
And if we talking money, I asked Arne the other day, how much does it cost to bury a person that's been killed? He said $1 million. And if Rahm's, the last year, his budget was for public safety was $1 million, and now they're only proposing $10 million to $11 million. Chicago, since 1965, hasn't had under 400 homicides every year. So how much are we spending when people get killed? We need to consider how much money then needs to be put into preventing these things, and not just people dying, but the circumstances that lead to people dying. This is a social and economic issue. So we need to be investing money in social and economic solutions. It only makes sense to me.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that at Better Chicago and philanthropy in general. To Arne, to your direct point, there's only so many resources we have. We can help fund some pilots, we can help measure it, we can help amplify its success, but for things to truly get to all people and for systems to change, public money is gonna have to be accessed and shifted to do the things you're all talking about. Jahmal, I would love to go back to kids and young people and just a little bit more about your work, how you're supporting young people in Chicago, and sort of what their goals and aspirations are to, so that front end, if you will.
Yeah, so I talked to a kid recently, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, I said, hey, Marquel." I said, "Boom." I said, what'd you do this weekend, bro?" He's like, "Man, I had a great time. I got to eat some good food. Got to see some of my friends. I got to dance a little bit. I got to kick it." I said, "What'd you do? Go to Great America?" He said, "No, I went to Leaks on 79th. It was the best funeral I've ever been to." These are the best funerals you've ever been to. So when I think of the students that I work with, man, And guess what? I've been working with Marquell for 4 years. He just got accepted to Missouri. Like, he wasn't even, when I first met him, it took him 6 months to trust me because so many people come in and out of his life. But I'm starting to realize that exposure is key. I spent so much time in my program trying to convince funders, like, traveling is transformative. Oh, Jahmal, how is your program doing more than just field trips? Meanwhile, their kids in Italy all summer. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see, because I'm asking kids, what do you want to be? They want to be rappers and basketball players just like me. That's all I wanted to do. Like hoop dreams, rap dreams, that was it. But now when you expose them to 40 different jobs throughout high school and they start talking about being Microsoft engineers and electronic traders, and they started getting accepted into college, you start to see it actually working. And so I'm just proud of myself that I figured out how to stay afloat long enough by selling hoodies and t-shirts online, right? No, seriously, I had to. Like, I'm in poverty. We're talking about poverty. I'm in poverty doing the program. Like, if you want to start a social impact organization in Chicago, you got to have faith. That's the number one thing you need. I got my home foreclosed. I had to get water from the next door neighbor to start an after school program because it meant something to me to do it. And now when we are getting, I don't even know if I believe in sustainability anymore because it's too frustrating trying to be sustainable all the time. Like you said, is a flower sustainable? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's useful though, you know what I mean? So I just want to do the best I can, do what I can and do the best I can. And as far as like with the students, man, I'm so happy to see them going to college now. I wish, when we talk about partnerships, I wish I could make them persist through college better. That's something I want to work on. But I can't do everything. I can just focus on trips. But I'd love to hand over Marquell to an organization that focuses on college persistence. So, because kids be dropping out. A 3.0 in North Lawndale is not even a 1.0 when you go to Missouri. You know what I mean? So if there's somebody that can help him persist through college, I need to pass Marquell along to that. So that's what I'm seeing from my youth. I see when I meet them, they want to be rappers and basketball players. By the time they take the trips with my block, my hood, my city, they want to be all types of stuff, and I'm real proud of that.
And I think, Chicago truly has so many different organizations working on the issues that we're all talking about. And Jahmal, those handoffs is something we're thinking about. And back to your, sort of the vicious feeling of territory, et cetera. But if we could just leverage this unbelievable ecosystem of nonprofits and supports and, for-profits, et cetera, helping students and actually have those handoffs and that collaborative, collective action, we could be in a much better place as a city. So, I would love to follow up, Jahmal, with about some of those literally specific handoffs on persistence specifically. Okay, we're running out of time. We've got a lot of people really interested in trying to do more and actually not only just learn today, but take action. Is there something everyone could just add about what, big or small, what can people be doing to either learn more, take action, get involved in some of the issues we've talked about? I don't know. Rick's smiling. I don't know if that means I should skip you or go to you first. He was like,
I'm looking at the time, and we don't have a whole lot of time yet, and I feel like I haven't even talked about the issue that nobody wants to talk about, and it's the whole race issue, and that we haven't even talked about that. The city, I think Jahmal said earlier, it's not designed to be welcoming. Well, this is the 100th anniversary of the race riots of 1919, and guess what? The city was designed to segregate itself and put people in different communities, and so we, 100 years later, are suffering the consequences of a plan that the city leaders created, and we haven't fixed that yet. And so I think the one thing that you could do is have these uncomfortable conversations about race. And do it, we start these conversations, these healing circles, these peace circles, and we say, we can't only speak to the choir. We need to be able to speak to those that disagree with us and do it in respectful ways so that they feel safe themselves in a space like this. But there are, in addition to the work that we all do, there are movements on truth, racial healing, and transformation across the city, making sure that movement is aligned with the work that we're doing so that we have these conversations. So the one thing that you could do is, you don't need to support Metropolitan. We're gonna be okay. You need to figure out how to engage in these uncomfortable work and be proximate.
Down the line. Yeah, y'all need to support my block, my hood, my city. No, but you're touching a good part of race. I can't stand when I hear people say, "Oh, your kids are so well behaved." I can't stand that. Like, it's just so well behaved, Jahmal. We took a youth-led tour. The kids are so well behaved. Like, come on. Yep. That's crazy, man. Like, respect looks differently from a kid that grows up in North Lawndale. They could be respecting you, you know what I mean? But it just looks differently because we have to order your food through bulletproof glass windows your whole life. Respect is different. But no, how can y'all get involved? Right now, we are hanging holiday lights on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, literally from 35th Street all the way to 115th Street. We're decorating over 250 homes with, everybody's getting a wreath for their door. We're putting lights on their gutters, on the bushes and the trees out front. We need volunteers to help us. We want the kids to see holiday lights instead of helicopter lights. We're trying to reduce the blight by hanging up lights, and we need y'all help to make it a wonderful holiday season for the kids on the South Side. So that's how you can get involved by text messaging MLK Lights to 77222. Again, that's MLK Lights to 77222. If you want to learn more about our youth-led tours, you can just go to our website, formyblock.org. That's F-O-R, myblock.org. And Arne, I want to say to you, man, like you inspire the HE double hockey sticks out of me. And I want to say that because when I first was starting the organization, it is a lot of competition in the nonprofit game. It's a lot of competition, you get a lot of hates. People be giving you these awards and that creates competition. Oh, you think you better? I should have got that award. You know, that's what people be saying. And when I met Arne, he was like, you disarmed me. You were like, I was telling you what I did. And he was like, man, it'd be dope if there was 1,000 other people doing what you do. I was like, wow, I never thought about it. I was like, you're right. I was like, it should be 1,000 other people doing what I do. And then that was inspiring. And then also, I always see you taking notes on the panel discussions. I forgot my notebook because I'm going to do that. But I'll be learning from you. I'll say that.
The problem is very proximate. I can walk down any block in Inglewood and possibly walk up on somebody getting robbed. The other morning, I turned on the news and saw some people getting robbed on the north side. So this is proximity to everyone. So everyone has an interest in seeing what we can do to help address this, to make this city a great city. It is a great city, but how can it be, great for everybody?
The theme I think you keep hearing is that we all have to make ourselves a little bit more uncomfortable. And so I would just encourage people to come out and just come see the work. And I bounce program to program across the city every morning. We have guests all the time. Just come see what Billy and the team and Rick's team and other people and Jahmal are doing. Just come see it. And you can learn a little bit sitting here today, but it's a whole different lesson out there. So that would be one. Two, understand that the men we're working with are the solution. They're not the problem. We have to walk with them and learn from them, but they are going to lead Chicago where we need to go. And that's a lesson. It took me a while to learn. I think I'm still trying to learn that. And third, I live in these different worlds, so I've never been to this museum before until Saturday night. I'm not good on art and culture. I'm trying to get better. But we were invited, Beth, a mutual friend of ours, invited my wife and I. There was an art auction here Saturday night. I've never been to an art auction before. And in about half an hour, a couple hundred people, they raised $6 million. Right here, Saturday night. I was like, I'm coming back. You looked, see which room I was coming to, so I know where to go this morning. And there was so much excitement and people high-fiving each other, and it's just a different Chicago than the Chicago we live in every single day. But it's also Chicago. And if we just had a little bit of that excitement for a piece of art that we had to making our neighborhoods safer and having our kids have less trauma, less fear, we could solve this thing really quickly.
Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, as you heard today, poverty is such a complex topic and issue, and although data shows that it's happening specifically in certain communities, it certainly impacts all of us. And to Arne's point, I hear a lot about, we like to say, Chicago's a world-class city, and I just truly don't think we can boast that title or tagline when we have 1 in 4 children still living in poverty today. And I think it's on all of us to sort of, get involved, start engaging on these issues. So I thank you for being here with us today. I thank incredible panelists for their time. Keep learning, engage with whether it's a Better Chicago or any of the organizations represented here. I hope you will and take some action. And thanks again for being here.